Hey, I'm Clyde. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, and Sony digital imaging advocate based in Sydney, and this is Underexposed. I mainly shoot in the wedding sphere. That's kind of like my bread and butter, but I've shot a lot of different genres, but my real passion is landscape, seascape, and wildlife. So when I was a kid, I had like a little video camera that my dad gave me. It was just like an old DV tape camcorder. Kind of just started playing around with it, really fell in love with video, and then kind of regressed and like went back to stills photography, and then kind of like found my love for that. But it's good because now I kind of have the ability to bounce back and forth between photo and video, which is really important, especially in today's market. We're shooting a little bit on the side, making a little bit of money here and there. I was working a 9-to-5 job that I really enjoyed, but I kind of saw what was on the horizon, like maybe this is an opportunity, or like maybe this is where my life could take me. And I think by then I'd already been shooting for about 10 years, and I thought maybe I do have the skills, or maybe I have the network now to kind of go all in on this. When I left that 9-to-5 job, one of the people that kind of really helped shape the way I shoot and how I shoot, and then also kind of the skill set that I've developed, is James Day. So I met James quite a few years ago in the 9-to-5 job actually. And it was really rewarding, making that connection and then starting to just be an assistant and then shooting for him, and then eventually doing a lot of the video work for his weddings. So he's been definitely like a really big mentor, kind of like show, especially with flash, like that's an area that most photographers try to steer clear of because of how complicated it is. And he's definitely someone that kind of excels in that area. Coming from a filmmaking background, then learning stills, and then having someone, as talented as James to kind of be like, hey, here's how to do flash. It's really cool. I find most of my inspiration through Instagram. I know that's kind of like an answer that's probably a lot of people would say, oh, you shouldn't be looking at things like social media for inspiration. But when there's so many amazing artists out there, it's hard to not look at their work. And I think as long as it's done in a healthy, positive way, I think it's a really informative tool. You can draw and pull from lots of different artists. I mean, before the era of social media, you'd have to go to art galleries, listen to music, watch films, and you have a finite amount of time that you can digest that kind of information. The first real project I worked on was a short doco for mountain designs. Basically, we knew that there was one day of the year where the Milky Way would line up with this canyon. The canyon's about halfway to Canberra from here, but we timed it, we're using photo pills, we're tracking the weather, we're assembling a crew of about 8 of us, and the idea was that we would abseil down into this canyon, capture the time lapse as the Milky Way lines up with the canyon itself, and then hike out at night. It's fun to see how a project comes together and how everyone puts in their little spin or their own little bit of flavor to the project. As a creative and as a professional, that's the direction that most people move in. You start as a solo shooter or solo operator, and then as you network and build your, not just friends, but you're building a community, you're building a network of people. The direction that I see most people heading in is, you start working collaboratively. I think as any photographer, when you start, you're probably not as comfortable talking or working with talent. So a lot of people kind of lean into maybe street photography or landscape. I grew up in the Hunter Valley, so I lived on a farm that was 120 kilometers from the nearest town. So wasn't really many people to shoot. When I moved to Sydney, I kind of started with a little bit of street photography, found landscape a little bit more rewarding, also because there's that travel component that's involved that's very fun. Kind of leaned into that, experimented with street for a while, found it wasn't really for me. And then, who doesn't love to travel? So the idea of being able to go to interesting places, capture interesting environments with interesting light, that's just a win-win-win. One highlight from my career so far is my recent trip to Antarctica, which was a really rewarding experience getting down there. It was a partnership with Intrepid and Sony. So Intrepid run a really cool photo program on board the ship, and Sony agreed to provide some gear and obviously needed someone to go down there to look after it all. So I was basically invited along to go down and help with that. And it was really cool going out in the boats every day in these Zodiacs, which are these inflatable rafts. So we'd head out on those, do a bit of a cruise, and then land on the continent a couple of times a day, do a bit of a walk, really get up and close with some of the wildlife. It's definitely the direction I want my life to kind of head in. I got to work with the BBC while I was there, which was incredible. And my partner's a biologist herself, so we kind of really want to operate in that ecotourism, sustainability kind of sphere. And I feel like this is the next step to kind of like transition into that. I think as an aspiring filmmaker or photographer, diversifying in the early couple of years is really, really helpful, because then you're gonna develop more skills more quickly. If you want to niche down, that's absolutely fine. But I think I'm a big kind of proponent for diversifying, just because the skill set is so transferable. That's why I think anyone who wants to become a professional photographer, you should at least shoot 1 or 2 weddings. Not saying you have to be invested in it, you don't have to love it, you don't have to commit your life to it like me, but weddings specifically, you're shooting indoor natural light, you're using soft diffuse window light in the morning, then you're doing macro shots for the rings, then you're doing portraiture, you're doing event style photography, like with the group shots, and then you're moving into maybe like flash in the afternoon, then you're doing dance floor, like club photography, you're learning to drag the shutter, you're learning so many skills across the day that so many of the skills are transferable. I think don't niche down, just like sink your teeth into it and like really, really try to learn as much as you can.